The galactic hegemony ruled over a vast section of the Milky Way for more than 10,000 years. Made up of 7 advanced alien species, they had conquered or peacefully absorbed over 300 worlds into their empire. Their military was perfect, or so they believed. No one could stand against their ships, their weapons, or their tactics. They had never truly lost a war. The leaders of the hegemony sat in comfort on their central worlds, confident that nothing in the galaxy could challenge them. Captain Olivia Martinez stood on the bridge of the Earthship Horizon and watched the stars through the main viewport. The Horizon was the first human vessel capable of traveling beyond the solar system. Its experimental drive allowed it to reach Alpha Centauri in just 3 weeks. Martinez was chosen to lead this mission because of her experience. Before commanding spaceships, she had fought in the water wars of the 2080s as a Marine. She knew combat. She knew how to keep her people alive when everything went wrong. "Captain, we have an unknown contact at 11 Mark III, said Lieutenant Steve Powell from the sensor station. His voice was calm, but Martinez could hear the tension underneath. "Show me," she said. The main screen changed to display a ship unlike anything humans had ever built. It was smooth, almost organic in shape with no visible engines or weapons. It glowed faintly blue against the blackness of space. "It's accelerating toward us," Powell said. "Matching our course." Martinez felt her combat instincts kick in. "Alert. Status. All hands to stations." The bridge lights dimmed to red. Crew members moved with practiced efficiency to their posts. Martinez had drilled them hard during the journey, preparing for this exact moment. First contact. Humanity's introduction to the wider galaxy. "They're hailing us," said Communications Officer Linda Hayes. "Unknown language. The computer is trying to process it." "Put it on screen," Martinez ordered. The alien that appeared looked vaguely reptilian, with scaled skin and vertical pupils in large eyes. It wore what seemed to be a uniform of some kind, dark and fitted with symbols Martinez couldn't understand. The alien spoke, its voice translated by the ship's computer after a moment's delay. "Attention, unknown vessel. This is Commander Kzavik of the Hegemony scout ship Relentless. You have entered Hegemony space. Identify yourselves and prepare to be boarded for inspection." Martinez straightened her uniform jacket. "This is Captain Olivia Martinez of the Earth vessel Horizon. We are on a peaceful mission of exploration. We were not aware this area was claimed by any civilization." The alien made a sound that might have been laughter. "All space within reach of the Hegemony belongs to the Hegemony. Your primitive vessel and technology now belong to us. Resistance will result in your destruction." Martinez had seen this type of intimidation before. During the water wars, enemy forces would often try to make their opponents surrender without a fight through psychological pressure. She recognized the tactic instantly. "I'm afraid I can't allow you to board us, Commander," she said calmly. "We come in peace, but we will defend ourselves if necessary." The alien's eyes narrowed. "You have no concept of what you face, human. The Hegemony has conquered species far more advanced than yours. Your ship's weapons, if you even have any, would be useless against our shields. Surrender now and your deaths will be quick." Martinez nodded to her tactical officer, Jack Freeman. They had prepared for this possibility. Not everyone they met out here would be friendly. "Deploy countermeasures pattern Alpha," she said quietly. Freeman pressed a sequence of controls. Outside the ship, 12 small objects launched from hidden compartments. They weren't weapons in the traditional sense. They were based on old electronic warfare devices from Earth's military history, updated with the latest technology. The alien ship suddenly seemed to hesitate. Its engines flickered. "What trickery is this?" demanded Commander Kzavik, his image now distorting on the screen. "Just a greeting from Earth," Martinez said. "A small demonstration that we're not as primitive as you might think." The countermeasures were creating a field that disrupted the alien ship's sensors and communications. It was a technique developed during the last days of the water wars, when resources were scarce and direct confrontation was often impossible. Earth forces had learned to fight smarter, not harder. "Withdraw your devices immediately," the alien commanded, but there was uncertainty in his voice now. Martinez smiled slightly. We will withdraw our defensive measures when you withdraw your threat to board our vessel. We wish for peaceful contact with your hegemony, but we will not be conquered or intimidated. The alien ship tried to target the small devices with some kind of energy weapon, but the countermeasures were programmed to move in random patterns, making them difficult to hit. This is not over, Kazavic said finally. The hegemony will learn of this encounter. The alien ship began to move away, its engines glowing brighter as it increased speed. They're leaving, Powell confirmed, sounding surprised. Track them, Martinez ordered. Make sure they're really going. The bridge was quiet for a moment. Then Linda Hayes spoke up. Captain, do you think that was wise? Antagonizing them? Martinez turned to look at her crew. We didn't antagonize them. We stood our ground. There's a difference. I've seen bullies like this before. If you show weakness, they never stop pushing. But their technology seemed so advanced, Freeman said. Advanced, yes, Martinez agreed. But that doesn't mean perfect. Notice how quickly they back down when faced with something unexpected. That suggests they're used to enemies who either fight conventionally or surrender immediately. They weren't prepared for our approach. Martinez looked back at the stars on the main screen. Send a tight beam message to Earth. They need to know what we've encountered, and prepare a detailed report on everything we observed about their ship and technology. As the crew carried out her orders, Martinez thought about what this encounter meant. Humanity was not alone in the universe, but the neighborhood wasn't friendly. They would need to be careful, creative, and brave in the face of this new threat. On the hegemony ship, Commander Xavik was sending his own report to his superiors. These humans were unlike any species the hegemony had encountered before. They should have been terrified by the mere sight of a hegemony vessel. Instead, they had responded with strange tactics and unexpected technology. The humans display irrational courage and unpredictable behavior, he wrote in his report. Caution is advised in future encounters. When High Commander Zarel received the report back at Hegemony headquarters, he dismissed it immediately. Exaggeration, he told his advisors. How dangerous could primitives from an isolated backwater planet possibly be? The hegemony had faced thousands of emerging civilizations before. All had eventually submitted or been destroyed. These humans would be no different, or so they believed. They knew combat after all. What they didn't know was that the outsiders from Earth were about to change everything they thought they understood about warfare. The Hegemony Council gathered in their grand meeting chamber on the capital world of Zyrex Prime. 7 representatives, one from each species of the Alliance, sat in tall chairs arranged in a circle. They rarely met in person like this. The encounter with the human ship had disturbed them more than they wanted to admit. This report is troubling, said Councillor Dreven of the Mektari, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence. A single primitive vessel should not have been able to confuse our scout ship. Admiral Vreelik stood in the center of the circle, his gray skin reflecting the blue light from above. He was the most decorated tactical commander in the Hegemony fleet, with over 200 successful conquests to his name. I will personally assess this human threat, Vreelik said. Commander Kazavik was young and inexperienced. I will take a full battle group to this Earth and show these humans the true might of the Hegemony. The Council approved his plan without debate. In their long history, no emerging civilization had ever resisted them for long. These humans would soon learn their place. On Earth, the message from the horizon had caused a global panic followed by urgent action. Defense Coordinator Alan Rodriguez stood before the emergency meeting of world leaders in the United Nations building in New York. Captain Martinez's encounter confirms what we've always feared, Rodriguez said. We are not alone, and not everyone out there is friendly. The room was tense. Old enemies sat side by side, now united by a common threat. What do we know about their capabilities? Asked the Russian president. Rodriguez gestured to the woman beside him. This is Natalia Sokolov, our top submarine strategist. She has an idea that might help us. Sokolov stepped forward. The horizon's report indicates the alien ship was confused by our electronic countermeasures. This suggests their sensors work differently than ours. If we adapt our submarine stealth technology for space, we might be able to hide some of our movements from them. From the Chinese delegation came Wei Feng, a small man with intense eyes. My special forces have developed tactics for fighting technologically superior opponents. We can modify these for space combat. Gabriel Okafor from Nigeria raised his hand. My urban warfare units specialize in using civilian infrastructure as cover. We could adapt mining ships and cargo vessels as hidden weapon platforms. For the first time in Earth's bloody history, former enemies were sharing military secrets. The water wars that had nearly destroyed civilization 10 years ago were forgotten, as humanity prepared to face an external threat. Rodriguez nodded. We need to work fast. If they send more ships, they'll come with greater force next time. 3 weeks later, Earth's orbital sensors detected multiple objects entering the solar system. The alien ships moved faster than anything humans had built, covering the distance from Neptune to Earth in less than a day. Admiral Vreelik stood on the command deck of his flagship, the Inevitable Victory. 6 other battleships flanked him, each one capable of reducing a planet's surface to molten slag. Open communications with the human homeworld, he ordered. On Earth, the transmission was received by the newly formed United Defense Council. Rodriguez and the gathered leaders watched as the alien admiral appeared on the main screen. People of Earth, Vreelik said, his words translated by computers based on the data from the Horizon encounter. I am Admiral Vreelik of the Galactic Hegemony. Your species has been found wanting. Submit to hegemony rule immediately or face orbital bombardment. You have 6 hours to surrender. Rodriguez looked at the military leaders gathered around him. They had expected this. The plan was already in motion. Send our response, he said to the communications officer. The message was simple. We need time to consult with all nations. Request 24 hours to prepare our answer. Vreelik laughed when he received it. A standard delaying tactic. Grant them 12 hours. It will make no difference. What Vreelik didn't know was that Earth needed those hours not for discussion, but for deployment. While the alien fleet maintained position near the moon, hundreds of small craft were moving into position throughout the solar system. These were not military vessels. They were mining ships from the asteroid belt, science platforms, and orbital maintenance craft. All had been hastily equipped with improvised weapons and stealth systems based on Sokolov's submarine technology. When the 12 hours were nearly up, Rodriguez sent another message. We have decided to resist. We will not surrender our world. Vreelik was pleased. Resistance would justify the example he planned to make of this backward planet. Begin targeting their major cities, he ordered. But as the hegemony ships moved to attack position, they were suddenly surrounded by hundreds of small signals appearing out of nowhere. What is this? Vreelik demanded. Before his officers could answer, dozens of mining explosives detonated near 3 of his ships. The blasts weren't powerful enough to penetrate their shields, but the electromagnetic pulses disrupted their sensor systems. Impossible, Vreelik muttered. Their technology is too primitive for this. More explosions followed. Earthships appeared, fired, and vanished from sensors. They used the moon, orbital debris, and even the hegemony's own ships as cover. It was chaos, and the hegemony fleet was not prepared for chaos. They're using our formation against us, reported his second officer. Our ships are blocking each other's firing solutions. For the first time in his 300-year career, Vreelik felt uncertain. This was not how emerging civilizations fought. They either used direct, predictable attacks that were easily countered, or they surrendered immediately. The Vengeance has lost engine power, his tactical officer reported. The Righteous Fury is reporting shield failures on its lower quadrant. Another ship, the Swift Justice, suddenly went dark. All communications cut. Admiral, we've lost 3 vessels, his second officer said, disbelief in his voice. 3 ships. Vreelik had never lost 3 ships in a single engagement in his entire career. The humans weren't even using proper warships. They were fighting with mining tools and communication equipment repurposed as weapons. Tactical withdrawal, Vreelik ordered, the words bitter in his mouth. regroup at the outer system boundary. As the damaged hegemony fleet retreated, the Earth forces did not pursue. They didn't need to. The message had been sent. Humans would not be easy prey. In the United Defense Council room, the gathered leaders watched the alien ships retreat on their tracking screens. "We've won the first battle," Rodriguez said. "But this is just the beginning." Natalia Sokolov nodded. "They'll be back, and they'll adapt to our tactics. Then we'll create new ones," Wei Feng said. "If there's one thing humans are good at, it's finding new ways to fight." On his flagship, Admiral Vrelix prepared his report to the Hegemony Council. For the first time, he would have to admit defeat. These humans fought like no species he had ever encountered. They had studied his forces from a single encounter and developed effective countermeasures in weeks. The Hegemony had always known combat, but these outsiders from Earth had just shown them that knowing was not the same as understanding. And, for the first time in thousands of years, the Hegemony would have to learn something new about warfare, or face a threat unlike any they had encountered before. The news of Admiral Vrelix's defeat spread quickly through the Hegemony's central worlds. Nothing like this had happened in recorded history. A pre-FTL civilization had forced a Hegemony battle group to retreat. The 7 council members gathered, again, their mood dark and their voices angry. "This is unacceptable," said Councillor Drax of the Vorn, slamming his armored fist on the table. "These humans must be taught their place." The other councillors nodded in agreement. Their entire society was built on the idea that the Hegemony was unbeatable. If word of this defeat spread to their subject worlds, rebellions might follow. "Propose a Level 1 military response," said Councillor Plex, her voice soft but firm. The chamber went silent. A Level 1 response had not been authorized in over 600 years. It meant committing a significant portion of the Hegemony's military might to a single target. Planets that faced Level 1 responses were usually reduced to lifeless rocks. "Agreed," said the head counselor finally. "And we will need our best leader for this task." They all knew who he meant. Deep in the secure vaults beneath the council chamber in a stasis pod rarely disturbed, slept General Moxthar. He was the most decorated commander in Hegemony history, a tactical genius who had led the campaigns that brought 3 of the 7 member species into the Hegemony. He was only awakened in times of greatest need. 2 days later, General Moxthar stood before the council, his ancient eyes taking in the worried faces of the councillors. His skin was pale blue, marked with the scars of 1,000 battles. "Tell me about these humans," he said, his voice a low rumble. On Earth, the celebration of their victory was brief. Scientists and military leaders worked day and night to prepare for the next attack. Everyone knew the Hegemony would return with greater force. In a research facility built inside Mount Rainier, Dr. Elizabeth Woods led a team working on experimental shield technology. The concept was based on gravitational manipulation, an area where human science had made significant breakthroughs during the last decade. "If we can create a localized gravitational field around our ships," she explained to Defense Coordinator Rodriguez, "we might be able to deflect their energy weapons." Across the globe, former enemies shared military secrets. Russian submarine stealth systems were combined with American drone technology. Indian cyber warfare experts worked alongside Brazilian aerospace engineers. The entire planet was focused on one goal: survival. Captain Frank Jones, a former Air Force pilot, trained a special group of volunteers for a dangerous mission. They would pilot small, stealthy spacecraft designed to exploit a weakness in Hegemony, sensor technology discovered during the last battle. "These ships won't show up on their sensors," Jones told his team. "We'll get close enough to place these disruptive devices directly on their hulls." He held up a small disk about the size of a dinner plate. It contained technology adapted from the countermeasures that Captain Martinez had used during the first encounter. These new versions were more powerful and designed to interfere with the Hegemony ship's internal systems. 3 months after the first battle, Earth's long-range sensors detected a massive fleet entering the solar system. It was 10 times larger than Admiral Vrelix's force. General Moxthar stood on the bridge of his command ship, the Eternal Dominion. The largest vessel in the Hegemony fleet, It was over 3 kilometers long and carried enough firepower to shatter a small moon. Deploy according to standard conquest protocol, he ordered. Surround the planet and prepare for synchronized bombardment. Moxthar had studied the reports from the previous engagement carefully. He understood what had happened. The humans had used their small size and local knowledge to confuse Vrelix's forces. Such tactics would not work against a properly deployed fleet, or so he believed. As the hegemony ships moved into position around Earth, they encountered no resistance. The system seemed empty of the makeshift fleet that had defeated Vrelix. They hide, Moxthar said to his officers. Prepare to begin bombardment of their largest cities. Once they see our power, they will emerge to defend their populations, and we will destroy them. But just as the hegemony fleet prepared to fire, hundreds of small objects launched from Earth's surface. They were not missiles or ships, but simple radio transmitters broadcasting on frequencies that interfered with hegemony communications. Ignore them, Moxthar ordered. They are trying to distract us. Then the real attack began. From hiding places in Earth's debris fields and from behind the moon came Captain Jones and his team in their stealth ships. They approached the massive hegemony vessels undetected, attaching their disruptive devices to the hulls. One by one, hegemony ships began experiencing system failures. Weapons went offline. Engines misfired. Internal communications broke down. What is happening? Demanded Moxthar as reports of failures flooded in. His officers had no answers. The humans were not fighting according to any known doctrine. They were not attempting to destroy the hegemony ships directly. Instead, they were systematically disabling them, turning the massive fleet into a collection of drifting, confused vessels. From Earth launched another wave of ships. These were larger and armed with weapons based on Dr. Woods's gravitational research. They didn't try to penetrate the hegemony shields. Instead, they created gravitational distortions that pulled the disabled ships into each other's paths. They're using our own fleet against us, reported Moxthar's second-in-command as 2 battleships collided, their shields flaring bright blue. More human ships appeared, firing missiles at specific points on the hegemony vessels. They weren't trying to destroy the ships, but were targeting communication arrays and sensor systems. It was like fighting an enemy that refused to fight directly. After 6 hours of this strange battle, a quarter of Moxthar's fleet was either disabled or severely damaged. The humans had lost ships too, but far fewer than expected. For the first time in his long career, General Moxthar faced a decision he had never had to make before. Order a general retreat, he said, his voice heavy with disbelief. We must reconsider our approach to these humans. As the hegemony fleet withdrew, leaving behind their disabled ships, the mood on Earth was cautious. They had won again, but at a cost. Many brave pilots had not returned from their missions. They'll analyze what happened and adapt, Rodriguez told the world leaders. Next time will be harder, Dr. Woods nodded in agreement. We need to keep innovating. Our advantage is that we have thousands of different approaches to warfare, while they seem to rely on a single doctrine. In his quarters aboard the retreating flagship, General Moxthar meditated on his defeat. In all his centuries of warfare, he had never encountered a species like humans. They didn't fight to win in the traditional sense. They fought to confuse, to disrupt, to create chaos that they then exploited. We have always known combat, he said to himself. But these humans know something different. They know adaptation. For the first time in its long history, the hegemony faced an enemy that seemed to become more dangerous with each encounter. And for the first time, the greatest military minds of 7 advanced species wondered if they might have finally met their match in the strange, unpredictable outsiders from Earth. The hegemony's leading minds gathered on their central world to understand what made humans so different from other species they had encountered. Scientists, military theorists, and xenopsychologists studied everything they knew about Earth. What they discovered disturbed them greatly. Their history is nothing but conflict, said Dr. Xilax, the chief xenopsychologist. While most species develop a unified approach to warfare, these humans have thousands of different military traditions. He showed the gathered experts images from Earth's past. Ancient Romans fighting in tight formations, Mongol horsemen using speed and mobility, European knights in heavy armor, Japanese samurai with their code of honor, modern guerrilla fighters using the environment to their advantage. They never stopped fighting each other, he continued. When one method failed, they invented new ones. Their entire history is an endless cycle of military innovation. On Earth, humans were busy studying the enemy as well. During the last battle, they had captured a damaged hegemony vessel that had been abandoned during the retreat. In a secure facility under the Rocky Mountains, engineer Kyle Patterson and linguist Maria Diaz led a team examining the alien technology. Their tech isn't actually that far beyond ours, Patterson said, looking up from an open panel of alien circuitry. There may be 100 years ahead in some areas, less in others, but they've been a spacefaring civilization for thousands of years, Rodriguez said, confused by this information. That's the interesting part, Diaz replied. Based on what we've translated from their computer systems, their rate of innovation slowed dramatically once the hegemony formed. They perfect what they have, but they rarely develop anything truly new. This discovery changed how Earth viewed the conflict. The hegemony's advantage wasn't insurmountable technology. It was their head start and vast resources. Humans were catching up faster than anyone expected. Meanwhile, the hegemony prepared for a new offensive. General Moxthar had studied the human tactics and developed countermeasures. His ships now had improved shielding against the disruptive devices that had caused so much trouble in the previous battle. His crews were trained to fight with disrupted communications. He believed he was ready for whatever tricks the humans might try next. The hegemony fleet approached Earth more cautiously this time. Instead of surrounding the planet immediately, they established a defensive formation at the edge of the solar system. From there, they launched probes to locate human forces before committing to battle. "They're being careful now," said Rodriguez as he watched the alien movements on the tactical display. "They're adapting to our methods, but humans had been adapting too." Captain Lisa Howard led a mission that no one in the hegemony could have predicted. Instead of waiting for the aliens to attack Earth, she took a small, fast ship in the opposite direction, deep into hegemony territory. Her vessel, the Swift Arrow, carried no weapons. Its mission was not to fight but to broadcast information. Using data recovered from the captured hegemony ship, Howard's team had discovered evidence of atrocities committed against worlds that had resisted hegemony rule. "We're not going to defeat them with force alone," Howard had explained during the mission briefing. "We need to fight on another front, information warfare." The Swift Arrow slipped past hegemony border patrols using stealth technology and arrived at Proxima Centauri, where a subjugated alien species called the Tellarites lived. The Tellarites had been conquered 300 years earlier and now served the hegemony as laborers. Howard's ship broadcast evidence of hegemony lies and atrocities. On all frequencies, they showed how the hegemony had promised peace to worlds that surrendered, only to exploit them afterward. They shared information about Earth's successful resistance, proving that the hegemony could be defeated. Before hegemony security forces could respond, the Swift Arrow jumped to another system and repeated the broadcast. Then another system and another. A dozen conquered worlds received the transmissions before the Swift Arrow finally returned to Earth. The effect was immediate. Reports of unrest on subjugated worlds reached the Hegemony Council. Minor rebellions broke out on 3 planets. Work, stoppages, and protests erupted on others. For the first time in centuries, the hegemony faced internal challenges at the same moment they were struggling with an external threat. General Moxthar received new orders from the Council. Crush Earth. Quickly, before the rebellion spread further, he launched his attack with every ship under his command. Earth was ready. This time, their defense took yet another form. Instead of focusing on disabling the hegemony ships, human forces used a tactic that exploited the rigid command structure of the alien fleet. Using the knowledge gained from studying captured hegemony communication systems, Earth forces broadcast false orders that mimicked General Moxthar's voice and authorization codes. Different ships received different instructions, creating confusion and hesitation throughout the fleet. At the same time, small teams of human ships targeted the flagship directly. They didn't try to destroy it. only to isolate it by disabling its communication systems. Without clear direction from their leader, the hegemony captains fell back on standard protocols, making their actions predictable. "What is happening?" Moxthar demanded as his view screen showed his fleet breaking formation, some ships moving to attack positions while others retreated. "Why aren't they following orders?" His communications officer worked frantically at his station. "Someone is broadcasting contradictory commands using your authorization codes, General. We can't override them." For the first time in his long career, Moxthar felt something close to fear. These humans didn't fight like any enemy he had faced before. They attacked not just ships and weapons, but the very structure of command itself. The battle raged for hours. Hegemony ships fired on Earth defenses, and some got through to damage cities and military bases. But without coordination, their attacks lacked the overwhelming force needed for victory. Meanwhile, Earth ships picked off isolated enemy vessels, one by one. When it became clear that the attack had failed, Moxthar ordered a retreat. Once again, the mighty hegemony fleet withdrew from Earth, leaving behind damaged ships and broken confidence. In the aftermath, the Hegemony Council faced a crisis unlike any in their history. Not only had they failed 3 times to conquer a pre-FTL civilization, but news of Earth's resistance was spreading throughout their empire, inspiring rebellions and unrest. "This cannot continue," said Head Counselor Velix, his voice tight with anger. "These humans become more dangerous with each encounter. They learn from us faster than we learn from them." The council chamber was silent as the 7 leaders contemplated their options. Finally, Counselor Drax spoke the words none had dared to say before. "Perhaps we should consider a diplomatic approach." The suggestion would have been unthinkable just months earlier. The hegemony did not negotiate with primitive species. They conquered them or destroyed them. But these humans had changed everything. On Nao Zunwang, Earth, the leaders gathered to assess the damage from the latest attack. Despite their victory, parts of several major cities lay in ruins. Thousands had died defending their world. "We can't keep fighting like this," Rodriguez said, looking at images of the destruction. "Each time they come back stronger. We need to find another way." Maria Diaz, who had continued studying the hegemony language and culture, offered a suggestion. "Their society is built on the idea of strength. Perhaps we should show them that true strength isn't just about destruction." A plan began to form, one that would challenge everything the hegemony had believed for thousands of years. The outsiders from Earth were about to teach their would-be conquerors a lesson about combat that would change the galaxy forever. The Hegemony Supreme Council faced its first existential crisis in 10,000 years. Reports from across their territory told of growing unrest. 3 minor worlds had already declared independence. Larger subject planets were demanding better treatment. All of this because of one stubborn species from a small blue planet. "We have 3 options," said High Commander Zrel in the emergency session. "We can commit our entire military to crushing Earth. We can isolate them and prevent their influence from spreading further, or we can try something we have never done before." The council members looked at him in shock as he spoke the last option. "Diplomacy?" Zrel said, the word feeling strange in his mouth. "We could negotiate with these humans." The idea was radical. The hegemony had never truly negotiated with a species that wasn't already part of their alliance. They conquered or they destroyed. Those were the only options they had ever considered. "The cost of crushing Earth grows with each attempt," Zrel continued. "And isolation will not stop the spread of their ideas. Our subjects have already heard of their resistance. The damage is done." After 3 days of heated debate, the council made its decision. They would send a diplomatic mission to Earth, not to demand surrender but to discuss terms of coexistence. On Earth, the United Defense Council received the hegemony message with suspicion. "It could be a trap," said Wei Feng. "A way to get close to our defenses. Or it could be a genuine opportunity to end this conflict," countered Ambassador Samantha Collins. She had served as a diplomat during the worst days of the water wars and had helped forge the peace that saved humanity from self-destruction. We should meet them, Collins said. But we'll be prepared for anything. The meeting was arranged in neutral space, at a point halfway between Earth and the nearest hegemony outpost. Both sides brought warships as escorts but agreed to keep them at a distance from the diplomatic vessels. Ambassador Collins led the Earth delegation. Her ship, the Olive Branch, was armed with the latest defensive technologies, but carried minimal weapons. It was a statement of intent. Earth wanted peace but would not be defenseless. The hegemony sent Counselor Plex herself, a sign of how seriously they were taking these negotiations. Her ship, the Eternal Truth, was an impressive diplomatic vessel used for meetings between the 7 ruling species of the hegemony. When the 2 ships docked, security teams from both sides watched each other warily. Collins and her team were the first humans to set foot on a hegemony vessel by invitation, rather than as combatants. "Welcome," said Counselor Plex, her translator converting her words to English. "This is an unprecedented event in our history." "In ours as well," Collins replied. "We hope it will be remembered as the beginning of peace, rather than a brief pause in war." The negotiations were difficult. The hegemony, used to dictating terms, struggled with the concept of compromise. The humans, suspicious after 3 attacks on their world, questioned every proposal for hidden traps. But slowly, over days of talks, understanding began to grow. The hegemony representatives were surprised by human flexibility and creativity in problem-solving. The humans were impressed by the hegemony's deep knowledge of interstellar governance, developed over thousands of years. "Your species confuses us," Counselor Plex admitted during a private conversation with Collins. "You fight like no others we have encountered. You seem to have no fixed doctrine, no consistent approach." Collins smiled. "That's because we spent most of our history fighting each other. We developed countless ways of warfare, each adapted to different circumstances. When you attacked us, we had thousands of years of varied combat experience to draw upon. And yet you seek peace now," Plex observed. "Because we also learned, through bitter experience, that war brings only temporary victory. True strength comes from building something lasting together, not from domination." As the diplomatic talks continued, a faction within the hegemony military decided they could not accept this new approach. Led by Admiral Krav, a hardliner who believed in the old ways, they gathered a fleet of loyal ships and launched one final assault on Earth. "We will show the Council the true way of the hegemony," Krav told his captains. "We will crush these humans and restore our honor." When news of the rogue fleet reached the diplomatic vessels, both sides were alarmed. "This is not our doing," Counselor Plex assured Collins. "Admiral Krav acts against the Council's orders." "Then let us face this threat together," Collins suggested. "Show your people and ours that cooperation is stronger than conflict." Plex hesitated only briefly before agreeing. She sent orders to the hegemony escort ships to intercept Krav's fleet. At the same time, Earth's defense forces prepared to meet the attack, but they were not alone. 3 ships from formerly subjugated species arrived to join Earth's defense. The Tellarites, inspired by Captain Howard's broadcasts, had sent their fastest vessels to stand with the humans who had given them hope. Admiral Peter Daniels coordinated the combined fleet from his flagship, the Unity. It was the first time in history that humans fought alongside alien allies. "Spread out and use swarm tactics," Daniels ordered. The Tellarite ship should focus on disrupting their communications. Hegemony loyalists target their engines. Earth forces protect our allies. When Admiral Krav's fleet arrived, they expected to face only human resistance. The sight of hegemony ships fighting alongside Earth forces confused and demoralized them. Their attack formation broke almost immediately. The battle was short but fierce. Krav's flagship pressed forward even as his supporting vessels retreated or surrendered. In a final desperate act, he attempted to ram the Unity. "Evasive action," Daniels ordered, but the massive hegemony warship was too close to avoid completely. As the ships collided, both took heavy damage. Emergency teams from all species worked together to rescue survivors from both vessels. Admiral Krav was captured alive. When brought before Counselor Plex and Ambassador Collins, he expected execution. Instead, he was told he would stand trial under laws agreed upon by both Earth and the hegemony. Justice, not vengeance, Collins explained. That is the foundation of lasting peace. 2 months later, representatives from Earth, the hegemony, and formerly subjugated worlds gathered on a neutral station to sign the Sol Accords. The agreement established new principles for interstellar relations based on mutual respect rather than domination. The hegemony would continue to exist, but as a commonwealth of equal members rather than an empire. Earth would share its rapid innovation, while the hegemony would provide access to its vast knowledge of the galaxy. This is the beginning of a new era, said Rodriguez at the signing ceremony. One where strength is measured not by conquest, but by cooperation. General Moxthar, who had fought against humans and now worked with them to reform the hegemony military, offered a rare smile. We knew combat, he said, until we faced the outsiders from Earth. And in their strange, adaptive ways, these humans taught our ancient civilization that true strength lies not in perfecting a single approach to warfare, but in the endless capacity to innovate, adapt, and ultimately, to choose when not to fight at all. As ships from Earth ventured out into the galaxy alongside their new allies, they carried with them not just the history of human conflict, but also the hard-won wisdom that came from centuries of war and peace. The species that had nearly destroyed itself had found a new purpose, teaching the stars that the greatest victory comes not from defeating an enemy, but from turning them into friends.